Okay, welcome everyone here on October the 12th, 2019, on the Potomac, on the diplomatic back channel, just across from the Naval Surface Warfare Center at Dahlgren. It is my birthday, so I wanted to do a special Crowdstrike edition. Striking the crowd is so much fun if you're Fiona Hill, if you're Dimitri Alperovich. And it's so much fun to run your rat lines if you have encrypted Blackberries. So today's version is going to be about Dimitri Alperovich enabling the Blackberries, enabling the secure Blackberries for both the Awans and the Bidens. Both the Awans and the Bidens. The Bidens are more the energy guys, and the Awans are more the weapons to get the pipeline guys. And I'm going to explain how Crowdstrike is pivotal, and Fiona Hill is pivotal in developing both the blue team, if you will, the energy guys and the Nazi guys in Ukraine, and also the red team, which is the Deripaska guys, the folks like the Wagner Group and other people that are backed by the red team, the Iran and Russia and China. And it's basically, very simply, you get the Nazi guys to get on one side of an area that you want to build a pipeline and start a fight and go kill people. And you get the red team to go on the other side and start a fight and kill from the other side. And you kind of zigzag along the area where you want to build a pipeline. And again, this goes back 3 years in our story. So for those who've watched the channel, just bear with me for a little bit. But eventually you build public opinion on both sides of the pipeline and world opinion that, hey, we need a zone of control. We need a green zone in between this red area and this blue area. And let's bring in DynCorp. Let's bring in Jeff Epstein. Let's bring in DynCorp, and we'll make a peace zone. And if you'll notice all along the way in our story where ISIS is threatening us, it's always along pipeline routes. It's always along pipeline routes, whether it's Idlib or Aleppo or going down to Iraq. Seems like ISIS is always attacking along pipeline routes, and that allows us to do green zones of military control, and it allows us to do topples of countries. It allows us to split countries in half, gives us time to do hacking. We hack every major government computer system. We gradually saw the trestles underneath all the bridges, and then we have a D-Day, and then we collapse the country and take all their assets. Hopefully they run rat lines for a long time, so that we can then, steal their gold like Gaddafi, and then we can pump the oil offshore, just like we do down here on Piney Point. We can lay the cable or pipeline underwater. We can bring in our pipeline guys, first fly in our Dnieper Volga Air, which is a guy named Viktor Pinchuk, and you're going to see Dmitry Firtash in our story. Again, in Ukraine. Ukraine has no extradition, so we're going to base all of our operations out of Ukraine. And then pump the country dry. Pump the country, both oil and natural gas, as well as we're going to do mining operations. You're also going to see Al-Qaeda or ISIS or whoever, the enemy of the day, Boko Haram, in mining areas. So thank you very much. I appreciate the, this is better than a card. Yes, it is. Thank you. I appreciate that. Super Chat's always appreciated on birthday day. Because I am, well, anyway, I won't go into all the birthday stuff, but I am doing version C of the Webb report right now. On the last, I think, 100 episodes or maybe 500 episodes, I put in a link that you'll see. The first thing that comes up in all the videos will be a link to the Webb report. So if you want to get a handle on the Awan Blackberries, which is more the guns for weapons Blackberries, you can go, that's chapter 1, that's the first version. Chapter 2 is more the Biden Blackberries. It's more these energy plays and the sort of the Iran-Contra nuclear deal, the various pipelines that we attempted through Syria, the various pipelines through the Eastern Med pipeline, the proposed pipeline across the Baku over to the Bijan-Kian refinery, the Star refinery, all those, the pipelines, the Unocal pipeline across Pakistan, all these kind of Senate Armed Services Committee, Senate Intelligence Committee pipelines are more the Blackberries from Biden. So our story, if you watch those first two Webb reports, you'll get an idea of the guns for weapons pipeline, how Gulen fits in, how Hezbollah fits in, how the sort of the red team works. If you watch the Biden Blackberry issue, this chapter 2, you'll see the blue team. You'll see the blue team. So chapter 3, the C, blue, it worked out great. Blue, Biden, Blackberries, Burisma, it worked out very well. But C is the most important thing. The C is conflict between Hezbollah and the Nazi-backed groups and the right-wing, the right communist wings. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Terry. And that's the big concept, is conflict, CIA. And what we always do in our series is we go down from big ideas and we keep focusing the microscope in on specific things that really give away the next thing that's going to happen. Obviously, Fiona Hill is coming up to Congress with her MI6, DIA, CIA crew that she's had at the White House. They're all going to act like they're whistleblowers. They're all going to act shocked. They're all going to act shocked that Trump used a little judgment that the country wasn't going to be corrupt, exporting revolutions to Libya and Syria and other countries, Sudan and Yemen, before he sent the weapons. Who would have known? You know, hey, the last time we gave you money, Burisma money, these weapons ended up all over Africa. They ended up all over the Middle East. What controls do we have in place before we send these weapons that it's not going to happen again? And I'll go into Zelensky and how really Zelensky and Deripaska are partners. Their mansions are right next to each other in Forte de Marmi in Italy. I'll explain how these decisions are made in Garmisch amongst the American military with the British military. Then they go down to Forte de Marmi and then they give marching orders to both the left and the right to create conflict. But going from CIA to really getting in and understanding this Crowdstrike or conflict, you know, strike the crowd. And people say, how could that be? How could you have the CIA supporting both the left and the right, both the Ukraine Nazi team as well as the Oleg Deripaska, you know, commie team, if you will? How could that be? It'd be the same way. It's the same way of asking a boxer, would you not have a left jab and a right hook? Would you not have a left-right cross or a left hook if you're Mike Tyson? It's the same thing. You create conflict. You need a left and a right to create conflict so then I can bring in my zone, my Dyncore, which is going to be our next version. So you need the conflict first before our next version, which is D and Dyncore. I'm going to be working on the C version this weekend so you can understand this more in depth. But the CIA's conflict in the world is expressed through Crowdstrike. That's a soft attack. It begins a cyber attack on a country far before the punches are ever thrown. If you look at the hacking history in the United States, CrowdStrike's been responsible for hacking the DOE, the OPM, 2 big OPM hacks of insurance companies, hacks of the VA, hacks across the Department of Energy. Thank you very much for the birthday wishes. So you see all these hacks. Well, what I want to do is I want to put my own people in key places to help form public opinion when I decide my D-Day is coming. And specifically, we're going to go from CrowdStrike now down to the individual level. I love talking about individuals and then talking about individuals' travel schedules and meetings rather than talking at a high level about the Zionists or whatever, which is more just kind of puffery or like gossip, internet gossip. So with CrowdStrike, we're going to get down to this Dimitri Alperovich. He's the actual person that encoded the Blackberries for both teams, both the red team and the blue team, the Biden Blackberries. He's the one who did the encrypted software. Again, I was at McAfee when he did it. I was actually on the Network General side. He was on the McAfee side. But they actually bought a company to write these hacks into various software, backdoors into various software. Virus software is just one of the ones that Dimitri Alperovich wrote. And Dimitri Alperovich is a really important person in this story because they're trying to convince you that Dimitri Alperovich is the savior. Dimitri Alperovich is this guy who came into the DNC. In 5 minutes, he figured it out. He figured out it was the Russians. The reason why he figured it out it was because Fiona Hill recruited those Russians, those GRU hacking people. We've told you, we've picked out 2 just so that you didn't have to remember all 24. We picked out Bogacheva and Krylova. And specifically, we're going to link that now to the spy schools where they were developed, how they were recruited in Russia, how they got to Rome, how that they were then developed to come over in the 2014 elections to disturb the 2014 elections and also the 2016 elections. The more work you can do with the hand, if you will, the more cyber warfare that you can do before the election, the less you have to do after the election if you lose the election. That makes sense. You want to avoid the shooting war if at all possible and just do cyber war the whole time. So you can also think of Crowdstrike as the cyber warfare and Dimitri Alperovich as doing the, thank you very much, Deborah, as doing the cyber warfare that comes in 2 or 3 years before the hot war, if you will. And that's why we focus so specific on the Rosenstein indictments and the Crowdstrike indictments. Now, where they were recruited, let's just go to the 2014 election and how Fiona Hill recruited the GRU team. They were recruited by a guy named Timofeev. There's an East-West conference that you'll remember near Sochi, where Timofeev would go and meet with Mifsud. And Timofeev was the man in Moscow. If you don't remember the dossier, remember all these people are in the dossier. Just like this, I was going through some old videos and saying, you know, this is Spygate 2 with Fiona Hill, when she came out in the New York Times article and started saying that there's a person in the White House that has misgivings about Trump and stealing stuff off of his desk, right? I said, okay, this is Spy Ring 2. Well, now that's coming on Monday. And I just want to link the Spygate 2, Dossier 2, whatever you want to call it, to Dossier 1. All these same people that you're going to be seeing in Dossier 1 are just one level up from all the underlings that did Dossier 1. Okay, that's the key concept. 2 of the key sources for Dossier 1, Timofeev was in Moscow. He was the one recruiting the GRU girls. The other source, I think it's the other way around, source B was Timofeev. Source A was Mifsud. Mifsud was the one that was meeting the girls over there in the Mediterranean. All the basic meetings for all the different spy recruiting was around the Mediterranean with Mifsud. And then they would bring the ones that kind of got above the first level. Thank you very much for the super chat. Got above the first level to Link University. This is where George Papadopoulos knows Timofeev. Remember, his wife works for, George Papadopoulos' wife works since 2009 with Timofeev at the European Union, right? Now, excuse me, works with Mifsud since 2009. She works with the 2 key leaders of the European Union to do this kind of spy recruiting. They divert money from the European Union to fund this spy recruiting. These are the people that the CIA uses for their undergraduate recruitment program to pick from to place in American universities, okay? We talked about 2 different groups that were CIA undergraduate recruiting programs. The first one was called the Annapolis Recruiting Group, and it's obviously right down this river over into the Chesapeake, where the Russian girls were. These are the winners. These are the sort of the best of the best. But you're also going to bring in people from all different countries, Iranians, Pakistanis, obviously, depending on what the situation is. You're going to bring them into these universities first, then get them inculcated as interns into Congress, different government departments, warfare centers, etc. Now we're finding out that the SES, Senior Executive Service, you don't have to be American to be a part of our government's top elite 1,000 sort of private law firm for government. It's up to 9,000 now, 10,000 now. You can be foreign born for that, which is, again, if you think about it, with the way we do background checking, gives you a start. But it's very important to tie Fiona Hill to the GRU and the GRU recruiting and Mifsud and Timofeev. And also Sergei Milyan was also involved in this recruiting, only Belarusians. Again, Nellie Orr comes more into play. But the key recruiters, the key CIA recruiters in Eastern Europe, this is the big idea, that we're all sources, one level down from Fiona Hill, that we're all Fiona Hill's sources, are now going to be recruiting the key people that have come in to affect our election. That's her job. The Russian working group is using this set of connections. And if that wasn't true, why would the Russian working group email have Andrew Wood from MI6? Why would it have Richard Dearlove's second? Why would it have Burroughs? Why would it have all these people from Cambridge Analytica? Why would it have all these people from the Halliot group, the Orbis intelligence group? All these people were Christopher Steele's MI6 group. She's the daughter of an MI6 officer, intelligence officer. Okay, all these things are being driven through sort of a DIA, CIA, Five Eyes operations to control all these elections, not just the American elections, but the European elections as well. And you only see these kind of underminings or Gladio programs surface when there's a takedown. When there's a very colorful takedown like Libya, or an attempted takedown like Syria. But again, it's what's underneath that's the important thing. It's Gaddafi's gold, it's Gaddafi's money that was seized by the State Department, it's Gaddafi's bank assets, etc., that are the winnings, if you will. And the person who is putting together these kind of pots of money are these associates of Les Wexner in the United States. Les Wexner is kind of the last vestige of the last of the three-legged stool of the old Meyer-Lansky crime gang. Bronfmans still are involved in it as well. So it's kind of a three-legged stool between Florida, New York, Canada, and Wexner, okay? They basically put together a fund, sort of like Charlie Wilson's War. You have a meeting and say, hey, let's do a fund like Rosemont Seneca, let's do a fund like Burisma. We'll use a company like Burisma as the rinse for this, and we'll do a Libya takeout fund. And then you get the money, just like speculating for oil, drilling for oil. And each one of these is sort of like a hedge fund, okay? A hedge fund is a little bit different, but idea is the same as a venture capital fund. Hey, we're going to put this money into a Libya fund. If we take down Libya, we get to sell the oil partnerships, we get the gold, we have to split it up amongst the military people that help us take over the country, but you get the idea, the speculations. So now let's get really drill down to this Ukrainian thing, because this really does unravel the whole conspiracy, right? Kolomoisky is the business partner of Les Wexner. Jeff Epstein flying back and forth to Istanbul, flying back and forth, all this kind of route between NATO generals and Istanbul, where we're getting the NATO weapons, diverting the NATO weapons, okay? For those who don't remember, Kolomoisky put the current person who's on the phone with Trump in office. Kolomoisky's this billionaire. He owns all these airlines for moving weapons. He owns all these television stations in Ukraine that he's put all this money into. Two other guys, well, one of the guys he's in business with is a guy named Dimitri Firtash, who's basically the same thing. Another guy is named Viktor Pinchuk. And these are the big three that have been running all the rant lines. The key idea is Ukraine is the control point. Again, no extradition. I'm going to put all my oligarchs there. I'm going to put my organized crime network there, and I'm going to run all the takedowns, both the cybercrime and the hot war part, the snipers, etc. I'm going to run all that through Ukraine. So again, this is where I say Joe Biden's just a front person, and Devon Archer is just a runner, if you will, to the crime gang, the Struck Bulger crime gang in Boston. So where the connection point is, you say, okay, well, where's the evidence? Well, let's go no further than SCL. SCL is this spin-off of Cambridge Analytica. Remember, Cambridge Analytica is a spy ring. You got Bannon in there. He recruits Mike Flynn in there. You've got all these guys on the same Russia working group email. Bob Otto, Ann Yablonsky, Bob Levison, Andrew Wood. You've got the guy, the second in Australia for Andrew Downer. You got all these people that are in this SCL group. And who is your connection point to Ukraine? Dimitri Firtash. Dimitri Firtash is a member of SCL. I believe Alperovich also had a company called iDirect to Pakistan. They basically have these connections, these business connections to launder money or ammunition or whatnot that's flowing. Ukraine mainly does the weapons. these are general statements. Mainly does the more sophisticated weapons. And then Pakistan does more the ammunition, the boots, all the other kit that you need for doing an invasion. So there's a kind of a split between the Ukrainians, Imran Awan, and Alperovich. How does this actually manifest itself on the floor of Congress to do one of these Charlie Wilson's wars and do the recruiting? Remember, if you're Nancy Pelosi, you're getting contributions to put this fund together. This is all being run through you and your covert action server. That's why it's so important to tie these political gifts to these funds, these takeover funds, these Humpty Dumpty funds, if you will. That's what's happening, okay? And $50,000 to get in, you get a lot more out. You get $1 billion. You heard Joe Biden say himself, it's $1 billion, and you're not getting your $1 billion unless that prosecutor's out of here by the time my plane leaves in 6 hours. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about you put in 50,000 less Wexner or all the Bidens or all the Blackberries, the Awan Blackberries that are taking contributions, and that's how they're putting the funds together. That's how they're getting the money to the covert action server. That's why the covert action server up on Capitol Hill is covert. That's why they hide it under a nuclear security or a surveillance program like the Pakistani drone program, okay? So basically think of it like this, like any venture capital fund, if we're gonna do something speculative, you put your money in, and then when we get the prize, we divvy up the loot. This is gonna be the Frank Giustra 1,100 partners. I know it gets complicated, but I'm connecting the dots between Fiona Hill and sort of this Cambridge spy ring and Dimitri Firtash, where the weapons are actually going. Dimitri Firtash, the connective tissue, is SCL. Again, remember, Mike Flynn's involved in SCL, Steve Bannon's involved in SCL, and all these characters from Five Eyes are involved in SCL, okay? They're the same people that put together the first takedown of Trump, put the first dossier together. They're also the people that contributed to the second, which is the Mueller report. Remember, they bring in the Russian girls, right? After, there was the Russian girls up at American University before Trump was elected, but there's a big new group of 72 Russian girls that come in after. So this is where we actually get to be a part of the story, where we're actually finding the covert action server, the whatever you want to call it, the Humpty Dumpty server, the takedown server, Nancy Pelosi's political pay-to-play server, whatever you want to call it, and our Blackberries. And we're interrupting this thing. We're involved in this story with the Awan. If you watch Awan, the Webb report for Awan Blackberries, or the Webb report for the Biden Blackberries. So these meetings, if you will, right now supposedly Fiona Hill is in London with her mother. Well, that's probably true, but she's near Cambridge. You're going to find that her mother lives near Cambridge, and they're meeting with these same people, these Five Eyes folks. And all this time, all 3 years, this same organization that's been created, part of the organization was through that George Papadopoulos had, and Timofeev and Mifsud had, was in London. Part of it is in Rome. Part of it's in Kiev with this Nabu. Again, you can do anything you want in Ukraine and then share it to London. You can share it to Rome. Mike Gaeta is going to be the key collector in Rome. Christopher Steele is going to be the key collector in London. But you can do any hacking you want, basically, any criminal hacking you want, no extradition treaty, and support from the FBI with a Nabu crime unit to get the information. And we have proof of this. Lashenko, time and time again, kept coming up with information about the Trumps, the inner circle, the family's travel schedule, who they met with, the human intelligence to actually do all this tracking. So, to review, big ideas. Fiona Hill created the first team to take down, influence the 2014 elections and the 2016 elections. We know that Chalupa is the one who was the handler here on Capitol Hill at the Library of Congress when the 68 girls came in. We know the 68 girls were provided by Bill Taylor and his organization. Is it any wonder that Bill Taylor is one of the whistleblowers against Trump? for the Javelin missiles? Of course not. They're his 68 girls that came over, and he sent them. He basically brought them over. He was the ambassador for 2006 to 2009 when they were doing the run-up for caching the weapons for Libya and caching the weapons for Syria. He's also the guy who was managing the reconstruction in Iraq, so he's an old friend of Schmitt's and gun running with Schmitt's. He's also the guy who managed the reconstruction or the construction of Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, Syria, and Egypt. So he was managing the funds, the takings. So he's a very key person, and it's very important to understand that he would not be doing what he's doing unless he was the key person in all these takedowns and all the cutting up of the loot from all these other takedowns. Understanding who Timofeev really is. And I keep going back to showing their first dossier. People don't want to like drill down on that, but it's their organization. They're laying out the organizational chart for you of who grabbed the source material and brought it up to Fiona Hill's spy ring to do the takedown of Trump. Timofeev's a very important person in Russia. Massoud's a very important person in the Mediterranean and also England. The Australians are important because Downer ran Cyprus. Downer ran the reconstruction in green zones in Cyprus. Downer ends up being one of these green zone guys in Bosnia as well with Carl Bildt. So again, he's very important as far as getting the UN funds. Again, if the Australians make a big speech at the UN saying, hey, we need to send money to Cyprus, we need to send money to Bosnia, we need to send money to Kosovo, we need to send money to Syria, we need to send money here. That's money we don't have to raise for weapons that we can divert, Peter Strzok's helicopters can divert later on down the track. So again, the Five Eyes is key to the English-speaking countries of the world. That's kind of the dog that wags the tail as far as controlling this. This is the center, this is the guts of Fiona Hill's Russia Working Group. We talked about the CIA agent Bob Otto as a key conduit through his wife, again, who lives in England, Anne Yablonsky. She's going to be very good friends with Fiona Hill. Very good friends, obviously, with the gun running. Bob Leviston on Kish Island. We've talked a lot about how UAE was key in this thing. And you get the idea. Libya is a good model to show you how they actually did it. They had one side that was organized by George Papadopoulos with the sort of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. To take down the Benghazi side of Libya, and they used the Quds Force in Tunisia with General Grange and Sidney Blumenthal and Tyler Drumhell to take the other side. And you've got this conflict. And Libya's been a mess ever since, and we've done a lot of UN peacekeeping since then. It's a weapons and arms bazaar since then, and it's a great place if you want to lose Stinger missiles to Al-Qaeda all over the world. These weapons end up going all over the world. So you basically have turned Libya into a weapons bazaar as well as a trafficking bazaar. So Fiona Hill, I can't underestimate the importance of Fiona Hill to this whole intelligence network, this British intelligence network, whatever you want to call it, Five Eyes intelligence network. And that's why it's so important before she testifies, that's why it's so important that we know her background. We can ask the right questions before she ever testifies. We can destroy the narrative that she's this, hand-wringing person who is looking at, one, Putin move after the other. She'll say Putin all the time. She constantly raises Putin and tries to diminish the importance of Ukraine. And tries to diminish the importance of NATO. She is the NATO's girl in the White House. She's been running this spy ring. Watnick, the jury's probably still out on Ezra Watnick. He may have been innocently trying to listen to phone conversations, but I know whatever he gathered and collected in the White House obviously ended up in the press. It ended up in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, not just with the Zelensky call, but also with the call to Nieto, the Mexican call, and then there was one other one, I can't remember if that was MBS or not. But obviously there's an open line to someone and into Fiona Hill's spy ring in the Congress. Bolton is also a part of this. She was a key kind of counselor for Bolton. She goes all the way back to the Obama administration and Joe Biden. So she's Joe Biden's girl as well in this thing. I don't want to talk too much about Forte de Marmi, but But in our series, we actually pinpoint exactly where the mansion is that Kolomoisky, this person that they're dealing with in Burisma. We actually talk about who bought the mansion for Zelensky, even before he was, just after he was elected. We talked about Kolomoisky buying his mansion right next to Oleg Deripaska's mansion. You see how closely the left and the right, or the red and the blue, are in this situation. It goes all the way, that, by the way, goes all the way back to William Colby, who's died right out here, after World War II. So today I wanted to just have kind of a general talk about Fiona Hill and the connection between her, which is Dossier 2 or Spygate 2 or Coup 2, whatever you want to call it, and the connections to Coup 1, and why these are the people of Coup 1 and Coup 2, because they were the people of Coup Libya, Coup Syria, Coup Yemen, Coup Sudan. And if they don't do the takedown of Trump, they don't stop the prosecution of Shokin, they all go to jail. And treason is a death penalty. So it's their motivation. I think understanding the conspirators' motivation is really important. Not only understanding who the conspirators are, that's important, but it's also understanding the linkage and the connective tissue between them and why. Why is the hardest question to answer. And now I hope after today you'll have some insight. I'm gonna get these kind of general thoughts down and tighten it up a little bit for the C, for CrowdStrike, the C version. But again, if you follow the Blackberries and you follow who did the secure enclave, who created this capability for Ratlines, who created the secure enclave, we have said from the very beginning it was Dimitri Alperovich. That's the key. We keep following CrowdStrike and the Blackberries that they configure, the software tools that they use to hack with Cozy Bears and Fancy Bears, like X-Agent and X-Tunnel. It again it gets us away from this generalities, talking in generalities, and gets us to the specific proof. Okay, when we go to DynCore with D, we're going to go to again. I've had some personal brushes there. We're going to go to tail numbers, and we're going to go to flights, and go to specific money. We're going to show you how different times Jeff Epstein loaned his money, loaned his plane, to go to Morocco or go to Kenya or go to Congo. These were weapons flights. These were weapons flights for Les Wexner to do these takeovers. It's going to be very important that we're going to look at all the AIDS flights that supposedly Jeff Epstein made, and he may well have had a few vials of anti-malaria or anti-AIDS drugs on the plane. I'm not saying he didn't do some humanitarian stuff when he went there, but what they really were caching flights for Libya, Syria, Sudan, Yemen, and how integral all these things are. So you got the Awans Blackberries for really getting Hezbollah weapons. You got B, the Biden Blackberries for getting everybody, for doing the kind of the venture capital side of this. And then C, now we have CrowdStrike enabling both sides in this creating of the conflict. And now DynCore is going to be the people who come in and do the peacekeeping and all the profiteering on the peacekeeping, the Wexner profiteering on the peacekeeping. So we're going to keep marching forward with the Webb report. I didn't want to rush the C version, the third chapter, but I did want to get this out before Fiona Hill testified. Her connection to Trump Coup 1 and Trump Coup 2 conspirators, as well as her connection of using Ukraine in all these coups all across Africa and really all around the world, but especially Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. So thanks everybody for all the great super chats. I really appreciate it. It makes me feel great on my birthday. And now I got to go do chores to get ready for my birthday. Thanks everyone.